Starborn. Remember, to be a star, you have to shine your own light, follow your own path, and not be afraid of the darkness, because that's when stars shine brightest. If you've been looking at our website, starborninstitute.org, you would know that this is a special show that I do each year in conjunction with another one that covers the predictions for all of the year. So I'm going to go over all of the predictions according to the new moons and the eclipses that occur in 2012. And that's why the title of tonight's show is Change or Perish. And that is because change is continually accentuated all year long. And if you don't change, you won't be able to keep up with everyone else who is changing. So I hope you really consider that carefully. And the reason why we could be all swept up in change, whether we want to be or not, is because there are 4 planets that are changing signs this year. Neptune is going to go into Pisces in February, and it's never been there in our lifetimes, but it's the ruler of that sign, so it will gradually have a wonderful healing effect on all of us. Then in June, Jupiter is going to change out of Taurus, and it's going to go into Gemini, and Gemini rules change, so that's why there's an emphasis on it as well. And then following that, in July, Mars will finally leave Virgo and it will go into Libra. And since it's a malefic planet, it will be joining another malefic planet there, Saturn, and together those two will be opposing the 3rd malefic planet, Uranus, in Aries. That will be a time when there will be no peace. The 4th planet to change signs is Saturn. It's been in Libra for a couple of years, but in October it will change and go into Scorpio for 3 years, and it will begin to trine that Neptune in Pisces. So those 4 planets are changing, and the net effect of that can be described in just 1 or 2 words. So I'm going to go through each month of the year and give you an idea of what we're facing, and then I'll go ahead and describe the effect of each new moon by every month as well. And so for January, I think that January is going to be a time to launch. And that simply means if you've been starting to do anything, or you've been consistently working on something and struggling to get it off the ground, January is your time to go for it. February will be a time when harsh cuts will hurt. March and April will be a time when during the spring it will indicate starts and then stops. So there's not going to be a smooth go in March and April, but that doesn't mean you couldn't try for something. It just means you should be prepared for delay or resistance. And then in May and June, we really will be faced with change as we head into a period of time when there are 2 eclipses, and one of them is in Gemini. And so it will simply mean that by the summertime, there will be change. We could have absolutely no room to move. In other words, you could be pressed somewhere in your life to make a change, and the outcome will simply be that you'll be facing some sort of crisis point by June, and we could all be involved in that, even worldwide. And then in July, I fear that there will be a defeat of some sort, simply because of the way the planets are lining up. But in August, there could be a resurrection or some sort of bright star shining, and it might be you. Then in September, there can be small gains to be made, and a small gain is better than no gain. And in October, we are all going to have to learn to live on less, but we might be able to do that rather successfully. And then in November, there will be rewards, and that's because we're looking at the 2 eclipses that will be occurring at the end of the year, and they're very powerful, sort of for the good. But by December, it can be a period of restlessness for all of us as we end the year and we are facing change, but we are not exactly sure of what that change will result in or what it will represent. So there can be some uncertainty and restlessness at the end of the year. All right, let's get into what those new moons represent. What does it represent? What will January be like? Well, actually, in January, remember I said that's the time to launch. And the reason why is because on January 23rd, there is a new moon at 3 degrees of Aquarius, and Aquarius rules the future, and there are a lot of planets there, and they are all trining Saturn in Libra. And so this is simply a time with so much reinforcement that you really ought to go for trying to launch some effort that you have already been working at. So it wouldn't be a fly-by-night impulsive thing. It would be something that you could have been working at for a couple of years. And maybe you've got the right backers together by January, or else maybe you have every step completed, and that's why you're ready to launch. And remember, Aquarius does rule space, and it does rule rockets. And so if you really want to get something off the ground, hit the ground running in January, because I think you might be successful. What does it mean in February? Well, February is a different story, and that is because on February 21st, there is a new moon at 3 degrees of Pisces, and Neptune will have gone into Pisces on February 4th, so it will have been there for a few weeks already, and the new moon will be very close to Neptune. But the reason why there can be some disillusionment or harsh cuts can really hurt at that time is because Mars is in Virgo, and it is a cutting planet. It's a very critical planet, and it certainly is a planet that means people are going to be watching their bottom lines and cutting budgets if they have to. That Mars in Virgo is harshly opposing that new moon with the Sun and Neptune in Pisces at the time. So harsh cuts will hurt. And there is just nothing we can do about that. We have to live with that because there is a strong grand trine in earth signs that will hold until June. And it is coming from Mars in Virgo, which is trining Pluto in Capricorn. And together they are trining Jupiter in Taurus. So if sharp cuts need to be made to budgets or to payrolls, or to organizations as they consolidate or merge, it will be in order to establish long-term financial security, which will have to be done. So I'm not saying we're going to like change this year. Remember, the title is Change or Perish, but it's going to have to be done in order to survive, and that is why the harsh cuts can hurt in February. What does it mean in March? Well, March and April both are a period when things can get started, but they also might meet with stiff resistance, and that could cause delay at the same time. So it's a spring of start and stops. And on March 22nd, there is a new moon at 2 degrees of Aries. Well, Aries rules new beginnings, so you'd think that that would be a wonderful time to get something new started, although I hope you started it in January instead when you had a lot of backing or support. But by March, yes, something could really get off the ground and get started, but it might just go up and then land with a thud. And the reason why is that there are 6 planets in cardinal signs. Aries is a cardinal sign, and they are all squaring and opposing each other. And that simply means that people cannot agree on anything. There's no consensus. And because everyone is thinking only of their own point of view, it really can cause a lot of challenges and delays in getting something new off the ground. So a lot of people are going to want to surge forward, but there will be things, even legal matters, that will stop them in one way or another. So you need to be aware of that. What does it mean in April? Well, on April 22nd, there is a new moon at 2 degrees of Taurus. And Taurus is a financial sign, which all year long is enjoying a lot of support because Jupiter is in Taurus. It's a wonderful planet, and it is being trined by Pluto in Capricorn the whole time it's in Taurus. And until July 3rd, it's also being trined by Mars in Virgo, setting up solid support for really getting practical matters solved in a way that can affect long-term security positively. And so what's happening is that the hardy survive, and they might be the only ones that survive, because the emphasis really will be in reality, such as a harsh reality check about your finances or the state of your assets and investments, or it can simply be that there really has to be a lot of work on long-term big plans that are backed by corporations or government agencies, such as retirement plans or pension funds that really have to look their bottom line over and perhaps reassess their positions. And so the hardy are the only ones that survive because it's just going to take a lot of steely hard work to succeed then. And the only investments that are really going to pay off by the end of April and going into May are the ones that are going to pay off over a long period of time. There aren't going to be any quick fixes, and there aren't going to be any wild speculation either at that time. And so this is a period of time as people really sort of lock down and go for the long haul when management changes. And as management changes by the end of April and going into May, it will be in order to really find out who the winners are and what they can do. And because we're all going to be in a situation where change is, when we're facing change and we need to change, and we're going to need strong people in positions to help us with that. Okay, what does it mean in May? Well, in May, we have the first of the eclipses that are occurring in the summer, and it is also the first of 2 new moons that we have in Gemini, and that is because on May 20th there is a solar eclipse at 0 degrees of Gemini, and remember, Gemini rules change. So as we're going into the summer, we really are facing serious change, and all of us will be affected one way or another by it. And we have to realize that by being versatile and adaptable, we can easily go from one transition to another. But on May 20th, with that solar eclipse being in Gemini, there are other planets there that are good. The Sun, the Moon, and Venus are all in Gemini, and they are being beautifully trined by an exalted Saturn in Libra, which rules the law and partnership and contracts. And whenever Venus and Saturn trine each other, this is very good for long-term friendships or loyal people who stand by each other. And so in your life, what it means is that some old friends could return, or it can be represent the reestablishment of an old partnership that it certainly could work out well now. And as far as the law goes, it simply means that the law will be upheld. And it will be the traditional law, or it will be the stable laws that have been in place for a while. They will be upheld. And yet Gemini does rule change, and it rules versatility and adaptability. And so we can sort of be waking up to the idea of, well, okay, if one thing doesn't work, we'll have to sort of have a plan B and try something else. And this is a time when there can be new ideas coming from very young people, since Gemini does rule youth. And the fact that it's solar eclipse means that it is a new beginning for young people, or it's a new beginning for people who want to communicate better, because that's what Gemini rules too. Okay, what does it mean in June? Well, in June, it's going to be a very busy month. And the reason why is that another eclipse occurs in June. On June 4th, there is a lunar eclipse at 14 degrees of Sagittarius, and it is not well aspected at all. In fact, it's very harshly aspected and can represent danger. And the reason why, actually for both eclipses, the Gemini one and the Sagittarian one, is that Mars is in Virgo. So Mars square, it's a mutable sign, and Virgo is a mutable sign, and Mars is squaring the lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. It certainly was squaring the solar eclipse in Gemini, and Neptune in Pisces is doing the same thing. And so what we have now is a grand cross immutable signs under these 2 eclipses, and it simply means that absolutely no one wants to bend, because the mutable signs are very adaptable and flexible, and they can see someone else's point of view, and they can be willing to change. But under both of these eclipses in the summer, there are planets that are challenging that, or that are making it very hard to be flexible, or very hard to change, because no one is able to agree on just one certain direction to go in. And so because the aspects are so dangerous, with Mars creating oppositions and squares to these eclipses, I think that by June, particularly early June under the Sagittarian lunar eclipse, a woman could be killed. And that is because she could be a foreign woman, or she could be someone in a foreign country, or she could certainly be somebody who is highly educated. Sagittarius rules 4-year colleges and universities. Or it can simply be that she is someone who could be even in a judicial position, but her life could be in danger because it is a lunar eclipse, and a lunar eclipse always denotes one woman going and another woman coming. So there could be a tremendous amount of danger as we begin to understand that it's just not a calm little world anymore, and that a lot of people are refusing to cooperate, and that is creating pressure and tension among a lot of people. And then 2 weeks after that, remember I said June was a busy month, there is the second new moon in Gemini, which rules change. And that is because on June 19th, there is another new moon, but this time it is at 29 degrees of Gemini. And since Gemini does rule change and communication and short-term projects and even short journeys and short forms of education such as seminars and training classes, it simply means that since the new moon is at 29 degrees, it means there's no more room to move. It simply describes the title of the show, Change or Perish. And if we are all at a point where, okay, we have absolutely got to change something, then I hope we do it, because perish is not an option. And so we'll have to try to be adaptable even if we don't feel like it, because we will be at a crisis point by the end of June. All right, what does it mean for July? Well, in July, I think, unfortunately, we could be facing a defeat. Now, I don't know if that's you and me or our country, but there's going to be a defeat somewhere that is going to affect a lot of people. And that is because on July 19th, there is a new moon in Cancer at 27 degrees. And it is setting up another grand cross among cardinal signs. And in fact, there are still 6 planets in cardinal signs, all squaring and opposing each other. Once again, that means stiff resistance. It means no one is able to reach consensus. And so with that indecision and the quarreling and the pressure and the tension, I think that somebody who can't get together with others is opening themselves to defeat. And that's what I think will come out of it. If there's no consensus, there's no way to win, or there's no success possible. And that's what I think is coming about in July. And so that could be a little down point in all of our lives. However, what's coming up in August? Well, in August, the sun is shining. And in fact, I think a star is shining. And that is because on August 17th, there is a superb new moon at 25 degrees of Leo. And of course, Leo's ruled by the sun. And the reason why it's such a wonderful one and why it represents resurrection is because it's completely unencumbered. And by that, I mean the sun and the moon are in Leo, yes, but there are no planets in any of the other fixed signs squaring or opposing that new moon. So there is nobody to challenge a leader or somebody who wants to take the lead. And since Leo rules children, this is very good for children's affairs. And Leo also rules the whole sports field, entertainment, and it rules Hollywood. So I think a star is really going to start to shine in August, and that the nation could even be focused upon that. So there can be some exciting news that is dealing with somebody in the spotlight, and it probably is somebody that richly deserves attention as a star shines brightly by August. All right, what does it mean in September? Well, in September, on September 16th, there is a new moon at 26 degrees of Virgo. And Virgo rules the traditional 6th house of work and health. And Mars is no longer in Virgo. It switched over to Libra on July 3rd, so it isn't there. And that simply means that this can be a time of small gains. And they can be good gains, steady gains, and those can add up after a while. So as we enter the fall, we may not be so resistant to change. We may see that could do us some good. After all, Jupiter is in Gemini from June on, and Gemini rules change, so there's got to be some good or some expansion available to all of us if we agree to change. and it can come in small ways. So in September, with the planets in Virgo being so favorably aspected by a trine from Pluto in Capricorn, and since Pluto is one of the rulers of Scorpio and it rules management in large corporations or government agencies, there are some policies that even if we're finding the new rules and regulations a little hard to swallow, still policies can help us make small gains, and our health can improve, and the budgets can be a little easier. And in fact, I think there probably will be a pickup in hiring or employment, certainly in the healthcare field in September, because the sign of Virgo, which rules those things, is so well favored. So you have that to look forward to. All right, what does it mean in October? Well, in October, I think that we're all going to have to live on less. In other words, we're going to have to pull in our belts. Why is that? Because remember I said we're going to be 4 planets changing sign. That's rather a lot of planets to change in 1 year. And the last one is Saturn, which is a planet of restriction and reward, but it's reward that you earn the hard way over a long period of time. And Saturn is changing signs on October 3rd. It is going into Scorpio, where it will immediately begin to trine Neptune in Pisces. But since Saturn is a planet that demands that you do everything right and work twice as hard as the next person, and since it is in a financial sign, Scorpio, which rules credit, taxes, inheritance, or money coming in from any other source, I would say there's not going to be as much money coming in, or there can be a cut in budgets, or when somebody wants to refinance something, the terms would be stricter. And so the people who have money are going to be looking around, and they may not be quite so generous at doling it out, even to a good cause, because they're going to want to see results. And so I think all of us are going to have to understand there's not as much money in the world anymore, and we're going to have to tighten our belts and live on less. The flip side of that is that we might do very well on that. And the reason why is that if you have less money, but the prices have come down so that you can afford more things, your lifestyle, even though your budget isn't quite as big, it might be more satisfying to you, and you might be making choices in a more careful and well thought out way and be happier with your choices. So you have that to look forward to. Okay, what does it mean in November? Well, in November, it is a month of rewards, and the reason why is that there are 2 eclipses in November, and eclipses always denote change and new beginnings. And so we see that on November 13th, there is a stupendous eclipse at 22 degrees of Scorpio, and that sign is just loaded with planets. Remember, the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, and Saturn are in Scorpio by then, and those 4 planets are all trine Neptune in Pisces, and so there are 5 planets in water signs, and that simply can lend a great deal of stability to our emotions. We can be very sure of how we feel about people, and we can know who our loyal friends are, because Scorpio does rule loyalty. But it's a financial sign as well, and so there can be rewards and some great victory in November. The victory could be a medical victory, since Scorpio rules the field of medicine, particularly surgery, but it could be a military victory as well, because Scorpio rules the military. But under those wonderful aspects, it would be a victory, and we can all certainly enjoy that. Or you could be rewarded by being eligible for better financing at that time. And then 2 weeks after that, on November 28th, there is a lunar eclipse at 7 degrees of Gemini. Remember, that sign's being highlighted all year because it denotes change. And the 7th degree of Gemini is the exact degree of the United States chart. And it's a degree of mystery. That's why people have a somewhat hard time really understanding Americans. But because it's a lunar eclipse, we say one woman goes and another woman comes. But it's going to be a change that's going to be wonderful. And that is because under that lunar eclipse in Gemini, Jupiter is in Gemini. It sort of lights up that sign. And so it can mean that change is very easy for people. In other words, if you're sort of thinking of moving on, you would make exactly the right move, and that might be the exact time to do it, and it would be very easy for you. And that's why November can be rewarding. What does it mean in December? Well, in December, we are going to be ending the year a little bit unsure of things as we face a new year. And that is because on December 13th, there is a new moon at 22 degrees of Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is a restless sign. It's a fire sign, and they like action. But it is also a mutable sign, and there's a grand cross in mutable signs at the time, meaning that people are very uncertain and somewhat unwilling to face new change. At the end of the year, we all know something new is coming, but we are not sure about it. And that's why we can be a little bit restless. And it isn't the kind of restless that is constructive. It isn't headed in a certain direction. It's just feeling restless and uncertain. So I think that's how we end the year. And to recap, I once again want to go back to just one or two words that symbolize every single month so that you'll know what we're getting into as we are facing changing or perishing. And we begin with January being a time to launch something, a perfect time for something like that. February is a time when harsh cuts are going to hurt. March and April represent a spring of starts and stops because there can be challenges, and something that starts really quickly might end in a thud. And then May and June denote change as we come into the eclipses at the beginning of the summer, and that change eventually will present us with no room to move and where we can be at some sort of crisis point. And then in July, we can be looking at defeat. And in August, we can be looking at resurrection. And in September, we can be anticipating small gains, but solid ones. And by October, we can be having to live on less or pull in our belt a little bit, but we might be more satisfied with what we've got. And then November is a period of rewards as we face two wonderful eclipses. And then December ends with facing a new year, but being very restless about it and uncertain of what the outcome of changes are. It's just that you have to really realize that it's going to be change or perish, and we all have to do it. But as long as we're together, I think that we'll do a good job of it. So please keep looking at our website, starborninstitute.org, because I'll be putting up new shows and new themes in my newsletter every week. Bye.